The government is consulting to try and clarify whether children can safely perform light chores on family farms. We're talking collecting eggs, feeding small animals, and watering plants. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm per se, but I grew up on orchards and in the rural parts of Hawke's Bay, and my dad grew up on a farm. You were out there working and helping as a child, picking apples at about 10, running up and down ladders. Well, and the kids can't water plants on their own farm. What's going on? Current regulations under the Health, Safety at Work, General Risk and Workplace Management Regulations 2016 prohibit workers under 15 from certain tasks, such as the manufacture or preparation of goods for trade or sale, or any work likely to compromise health and safety. I mean, is feeding chickens dangerous? I suppose it depends on what mood the chickens are in. Breaching these regulations can result in fines up to $50,000. My gosh. Right. Workplace Minister, Relations and Safety, Brooke van Velden, says the proposed changes aim to amend these regulations and allow kids to participate in age-appropriate chores without compromising their safety. And the Minister joins me now. Brooke, good morning.
Good morning, Leah.
This seems to be a strange one to me, which I knew nothing about, so I'm really glad we're talking about it. First of all, is feeding chickens dangerous?
Look, I don't think it is. I particularly did like your joke about whether or not it's the mood of the chickens that day.
Yeah, well,
but
some of them can be moody.
But the first thing I'd say is, I'm thankful for you, Leah, because, my dislike for mainstream journalists who have chosen to just mislead people rather than report the news. And, we've been fixated over the last 24 hours about whether or not it's safe to feed chickens or not. But this is actually quite a serious matter because we want to protect the rural Kiwi way of life, and we want to acknowledge that kids do grow up in rural settings and they do help their parents out on the farm.
Absolutely.
But the current rules don't allow for that to happen. So what I'm looking to do is actually make our laws far more set in reality, that rural kids, they live on farms, they get schooled on farms, and they work on farms.
Yeah.
But how do we ensure that, WorkSafe is not going to come down onto a farm if something has gone wrong and a kid's been there, and the parents are now petrified that they're going to be prosecuted because their kids were doing something fun when it was a work environment. And that's something that I have heard from the community, that there is a culture of fear about WorkSafe when you've got a home and a work environment in the same place. So I'm here to try and help protect the rural communities.
Yeah, well, because Brooke, that's exactly what they are. They are, as you pointed out, yes, they're a place of work, but they're a family home. A farm is work and play, at work and home. The kids live in it, the parents live in it. Dad and mum get up, walk out the door, and they are at work, and it's 24/7. So, it must be difficult when you've got these very silly rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said you first heard concerns from the rural sector, particularly women, that the current law was vague and complex. Can you give us some examples or?
Yeah, so I actually love going to field days, and this is where this kind of popped up last year, because we did our roadshow and we started off at field days. And I got speaking to some members of rural women, and that's not just women in general, it's an actual group of, like an organisation, rural women. And they said, the laws are kind of confusing because, there is some concern out in the community about the balance between a work environment and a home environment when they are the exact same thing. And there is this fear of WorkSafe and wanting your kids to be involved and learn a trade and be productive and helpful and learn really good life skills. But what actually happens if something goes wrong? Will WorkSafe come down hard on a rural family? And I acknowledge there haven't been any prosecutions in this space, but that doesn't mean that that fear is not valid. It's kind of the same as, landowners who haven't been giving as much access to rural communities to go duck shooting or hunting on their land because of fear of prosecution if something went wrong. So we've actually got to protect the Kiwi way of life and ensure that this fear of WorkSafe is not creeping over and destroying that way of life. So I'm looking at how we can amend our regulations to make it clearer for rural families that their kids can be involved in rural settings, but we also have to have some barriers where we know, there are some things that are genuinely dangerous on farms.
Yeah.
Things like quad bikes, which is why we're working. Well, I'm asking WorkSafe to work with the rural sector and families to set what are called approved codes of practice for what is safe use of machinery and vehicles on farms, because there are actually too many people dying from quad bike accidents, but it's got to be baked in reality. What is actually going to work on farm rather than something set by Wellington?
Can you, I kind of joked about the chickens and stuff, but can you, Minister, give us maybe just a couple, just to be clear, that at the moment a child living on a farm under 15 cannot do that we might go, oh my gosh, I used to do that when I was growing up. So what are they not allowed to do,
Yeah, well, the law itself is not very clear. It just says you can't do anything that might be harmful to health and safety. What does that mean?
That's nice and
you
broad.
Can't do any. It's very broad. You can't do anything that would be seen as hazardous work. But once again, what would that be defined as?
Yeah.
And so this is really trying to provide some clarity and better guidance, because what I've heard is that people don't want no rules, which was a surprise genuinely when I heard that on the roadshow. People don't want no rules; they just want clear rules.
Sure.
And
because they don't want to put their family in risk, do they, Brooke? They of course they want rules. They want to know that, but they're not going to put their kids or themselves in danger purposely. So, interesting. Is this come about? When do these rules, these very vague rules, come into existence? Was it 2016? Is this when it was changed?
Yeah, that's my understanding. So we've got this thing called the General Risk Regulations 2016 that came about just after the Health and Safety Work Act 2015 that put it in place, which is why I guess we've got so many members of the community saying, this doesn't sound like how I grew up on the farms at all.
Is this under National, Brooke? Was this under National? I was.
Yeah, well, I suspect so, given that it was 2016. But look, that's the past.
That aside, Leah.
I want to focus on the future, because clearly our rules actually need to have a bit more common sense in them. And it's not going to work for us if the current settings say it's illegal to use common sense.
Yeah. Also, just quickly before we move on, could this review open the door, do you think, to wider changes about how we define a workplace in rural New Zealand?
It's possible. The one thing I've made sure of is that I'm not going into this targeted consultation already having made up my mind. What I've done is I've gone out around the country over the last year. I've listened and I've heard New Zealanders and their concerns. We've come back to Wellington now, and now we're going out again on this targeted mission to say, okay, we heard the concern, let's see how we can fix it. But I personally, and this is a big belief of the ACT Party, don't believe that politicians are special people who have the answers to everything. We actually listen to Kiwis, and I want to make sure that the settings that change are not going to be ones that were written by a bureaucrat in Wellington, but they actually had input from the communities affected. So we'll be going back out to say, okay, if the rule's not right now, how do we make it better for you? Now, I can't guarantee it's going to be exceptional in all circumstances, but it will be better than what we've got now.
Yeah. JJ's just quickly asked, could you ask if the Minister, how would she view the operating of a tractor, say, by a 15-year-old? Yes or no?